Hello, good morning. I would like to ask you to take your seats. Dear official guests, speakers, and delegates, dear partners and friends, being us today in the room and for all joining us online. It is my great pleasure to be back in Vilnius and to welcome you to the second edition of the new series of events, Clusters Meet Regions. Cluster Meet Regions, this edition, Cluster Meet Baltic Sea Regions, is organized by the European Commission in collaboration with the Lithuanian Ministry of Economy and Innovation, European Cluster Collaboration Platform, Agri-Food Lithuania DIH, Smart Food Cluster, and Agency of Science, Innovation and Technology. The objectives for the day is to discuss responses to the economic challenges, such as the supply chain disruptions and loss of market and inputs, and to enable EU companies to get in touch with other and develop business cooperation and open for new opportunities and investments. Before starting, some housekeeping rules. Please note that this session and event is being recorded and will be featured after that at the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. We will be having various sessions where we will open for Q&A. So please, if you'd like to take part, we will be happy to give you the microphone. And when having the microphone, please present your name and a company. We will value your comments. For everyone who is with us today online, please use the chat in order to address your questions and comments, and we will try to follow them during the day. Stay connected, share your thoughts. Please use the hashtag #ClustersMeetRegions. EU regions need to stay resilient in the face of pandemic, geopolitical, and other crises. So it is my great pleasure to welcome again everyone in the room and the Vice Minister Ieva Valeškaitė of the Ministry of Economy and Innovation for the welcoming words. Thank you, Vice Minister.
Good morning, everyone, dear businessmen and businesswomen, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and a great joy to be here among you today. The most efficient way to bring clusters and policymakers together is to get them physically together. After a couple of years spent entirely in virtual formats and in lockdowns, moving to the real world is a perfect emotional recovery. Let's hope we are moving to physical meetings with no changing back. I know that everyone is waiting for a very special guest who will still be joining us today remotely, the Commissioner Breton. But one last thing I would like to say, that we in the Ministry of Economy and Innovation know business people well. You have always been flexible about new economic realities and challenges. Therefore, we are confident that you will be the driving force in search for new cooperation opportunities. Thank you, and let me wish you all fruitful discussions, constructive contacts, and best of success. Thank you, Theodora.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister, and I'm sure that later on a lot of things more will be further discussed, but thank you very much for hosting us and welcoming us today here. And now we are having the address by the Commissioner Breton directly from Brussels. So thank you very much, and having real pleasure to giving the floor for the welcoming words of Commissioner Breton.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear Minister, it's my pleasure to address you for the opening of this two-day hybrid workshop organized to help companies in the Baltic region to mitigate supply chain disruptions. I wish, of course, I could be with you in Vilnius, a city close to my heart where I have held very stimulating discussions recently. We are facing today an unprecedented conjunction of crises. On top of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are now facing the consequences of an unspeakable act of aggression from Russia against Ukraine and the shock of war on our doorstep. Beyond the humanitarian tragedy, this war is casting sheer uncertainty over our near future. The unprecedented sanctions and restrictive measures imposed on Russia are shaping a new reality for investment and trade. These measures are also affecting EU businesses, with, of course, consequences that can vary depending on member states' exposure to the Russian economy through trade, banking, and supply chains, of course. Our preliminary estimates show that the sectors of mobility, agri-food, electronics and chemicals, as well as, of course, logistics, are particularly affected. This is explained by shortages in key components and raw materials, such as cable harnesses for mobility, potash for fertilizers, titanium for defense and aeronautics. And of course, we are monitoring the situation very closely and exploring all the possible options to mitigate the disruptions. And of course, as we all know, in Lithuania, you are also facing unjustified sanctions from China, which are incompatible with our WTO rules. All these crises and also tensions revolve around the same issue: the ability of Europe to ensure its security and prosperity in, of course, an increasingly volatile world. To me, one of the key lessons of the succession of crises we are experiencing is that we must continue building a resilient single market. The single market remains our strongest asset to safeguard and strengthen strategic supplies. In fact, the single market is a tool of geopolitical importance. Whether we like it or not, the current geopolitics is further proof that we need to be better equipped to avoid shocks to our supply chains. Therefore, we need a structural reflection on how to better anticipate and react to a future crisis which, whatever its nature, may cause major shocks to demand or supply, affecting our industries and fragmenting our single market. We are therefore working on a single market emergency instrument with two main components: better preparedness and reinforced capacity to react in case of shocks. And in doing so, I am looking carefully at the measures that our international partners have already put in place to become just more responsive and stronger in defending their own interest. It is time to have a discussion without naivety and without taboos on the toolbox we need to ensure the available of the most critical product and services in time of crisis. We have just launched a public consultation to gather input to our thinking, and of course, I will encourage you to submit your views. In this context, we must identify, use and mobilize our industrial and SME support networks, starting with European clusters and enterprise Europe network like we are doing today. The platform Clusters Support Ukraine and the Supply Chain Resilience Platform, which were set up within a matter of days from the outbreak of the war, show the importance of these networks. But of course we can do more. Today's and tomorrow's event will foster new collaboration opportunities to replace lost markets or to find alternatives for shortages of inputs. I believe that successful partnerships will stem from this event. Cooperation and unity are the only recipes to deliver the resilience and strategic autonomy we want for our continent. Europe can reach these goals if we work together and uphold the values that we stand for in unity. Thank you, and I would like to wish you all the best for these 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Breton. And if you allow me, I'll just repeat something that probably we will be saying throughout the course of the day, that we are here to be more stronger and to be more resilient. So with that, we are going to the next opening high-level discussion, where I would like to welcome on the floor Mr. Antonio Novo, who will be moderating the session and who is the President of the European Cluster Alliance, as well as to welcome back on the floor the Vice Minister. So they will be on that panel, and Antonio will continue with presenting and keeping the questions. Thank you.
So thank you, Teodora, for your kind introduction, and good morning, everybody. I don't know to be here, to return to Lithuania after 2 years of my first meeting here with the vibrant cluster community. Jedrius, Christina, and many other Lithuanian representatives play a key role in the activities of the European Cluster Alliance, being members of our board of directors, and very active agents also in the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, that is the organization that is creating this event, okay? Also, MITA, the Agency for Science, Innovation and Technology, is member of EUCLES, the entity that is managing the quality labels for the cluster management. So I need to congratulate the Lithuanian community for all the activities that are doing in the cluster environment, in the collaborative environments. It's not a surprise at all that now, in this special situation, in very complex societal and industrial challenges, we meet here to explore how to better face them together in a collaborative and innovative way. This opening panel is titled Clusters as Key Drivers of Regional Development and Growth, Repair and Prepare for the Future. I kindly invite Eva Balaskaite, Vice Minister of Economy and Innovation in the Republic of Lithuania, to take the floor and share with us your views on this topic.
Thank you very much. Should I do it here? Or?
So, as you prefer.
So hello again, everyone. I would like to give you a few words from Minister Aušrinė Armonaitė, who is deeply saddened that she cannot be with all of you here today. In today's world, strengthening the cooperation with close and closest neighbors has become even more critical. The consequences of pandemic, Russia's aggression against Ukraine and China's pressure against Lithuania make us further strengthen our cooperation in the EU single market. As I was joking with Jakub just before our panel discussion, when we started our work in the government, we couldn't hope for the worst case as we are having it right now. The pandemic, China, and now the war in Ukraine. We are joking in our political team that the only thing that we can expect now is the alien invasion. And when speaking of alien invasion, I'm not speaking about Russia or Belarus. So it's a joke, but the situation is really very alarming one, and I know that you as businessmen value transparency, so I don't want to sugarcoat the situation. It is serious, and for that we must work shoulder to shoulder with everyone to get the best out of the situation that we can. Our businesses are withdrawing from the aggressor's market, and therefore we need to help our companies diversify their markets swiftly. We need to find correct elements for disrupted supply chains, secure the supply of raw materials for our industries, and find solutions to mitigate the impact of rising energy prices. And sometimes it may seem that Lithuania is not in a good position to do this, but we must remember that we are a small but open economy, and this allows us for some flexibility. We can react to these changes swiftly, and we can take the measures that must be taken right away. As you may know, in November 2021, despite the COVID pandemic, Lithuania was the fastest growing market, like the fastest amounts of production were growing fastest in the Eurozone. So this shows that when we want, we can really become resilient and we can find those measures that are needed to cope with the unprecedented events of our time. In this regard, of course, we see clusters as an important player. The integration of clusters in economic governance and policy making is crucial. Public authorities must understand the need for joint work to develop policies and enable business to expand further. And we in the Ministry of Economy and Innovation really take this in mind seriously. Most importantly, cooperation with other European entities engaged in similar economic activities would reinforce the capacity to lead the green transition, accelerate digital growth, and of course, build resilience. Clusters can have a striking impact on economic growth and innovative business activity. Therefore, we need to find more creative ways to solve global problems. And I am extremely delighted to see that Lithuania is becoming partner in various fields. Lithuania, with almost 50 clusters, is a leading country in the Baltic states. So there's a lot to learn and share, and I hope we will be successfully doing this today. Our clusters are active in manufacturing, engineering, agri-food, automotive, lasers, and creative industries, and of course, life sciences. So I hope that this event becomes a great platform where we can share our mutual ideas, find partnerships, and I believe that Maivis also will be talking about how can we prosper our partnerships. Thank you.
You are very welcome, Eva. It's time now to welcome Maeve Ruth, Deputy Director General in the DG Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs, GROW. As Deputy Director General in GROW, Maeve Ruth focuses on green transition of industries, resilience of supply chains, promotions of investments, standardization and IP rights. Between 2005 and 2019, she has worked as Director for Entrepreneurship and SMEs and as Director of DDG in the Research and Innovation field of the European Commission. Maeve, dear Maeve, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you a lot. And let me say that although I'm sitting here in the rainy Brussels, I'm also very much with you in my thoughts and heart, so to say, being from the country in the neighborhood from Estonia originally. It's really a pleasure to see that Lithuania is keeping the flag very high and is very actively engaging, both helping out the Ukraine for war refugees as well as economy there, and of course looking for ways of being more engaged in European single market. So really thank you for the invitation, and I'm very grateful to the Lithuanian Ministry of Economy for organizing it together with us. We see that the great place you have also offered, the City Hall of Vilnius, is a good occasion to really come together in physical meeting as well. We already have heard from the opening speeches that we are indeed, as Europe now, operating in a crisis mode. And I wanted to bring to you a couple more messages from our commissioner, besides of what he has already just said. But I found from his yesterday's presentation really a strong conviction, which I wanted to reiterate here. Yesterday we had a so-called European Industry Forum meeting. An industry forum is for us, I would say, the highest level of platform to discuss the state of play and how to take things forward with the various industrial stakeholders. And there our commissioner was basically saying, the way he said it also today, but maybe with even stronger language, that things will never be the same again. And we are really facing a turning point for our economies. We see that these geopolitical shifts are shaping and reshaping the way we think about the role of Europe. the way we think about the role of single market, in fact, and the place we have in the world. And we have, of course, to take the lessons from the COVID times and apply them and look for ways of taking our economic and societal futures even more into our hands than we perhaps realized before 24th of February. So I found this really a very strong message from the Commissioner, where he's calling upon all of us to find ways of using this crisis to come out of it stronger than before. And you have heard him saying, and also our Deputy Minister here saying, that we have, of course, short-term issues and we have longer-term issues. We have the shortages of various strategic products, inputs, materials, technologies, and then we have, of course, longer-term structural issues which we face. Maybe I will illustrate with few numbers and examples what we have been working on and what we hope also this workshop today and the matchmaking will help us solve. Well, we know that already before the Russian aggression in Ukraine, we were facing various, let's say, dependencies and shortages, and therefore, of course, the collaboration with wide range of actors, which are invited also to the event today through the clusters, business organizations, individual companies. This is really a one tool that will help us. And from today's event, we hope that the Baltic Sea region companies will find more collaboration with each other, but not ever lesser importance is to find ways of working with the rest of Europe. So single market indeed is the tool that we hope will bring us through these difficult times. Now, first on a couple of words on the impact that the Russian aggression in Ukraine is having on our economies. Just to illustrate with few numbers, EU gets about 20-21% of its iron and steel imports and 70% of our aluminium from Russia. Russia and Belarus together account for about a third of EU fertilizer inputs. And then also the share of wood imports is quite high. It depends on the type of wood which we talk about, but it's between 7% and 25% of our imports from Russia and Belarus. But then, of course, not every EU member state is exposed to the same level. We have, of course, some countries, particularly in the neighborhood, who have been doing more trade in some of these materials I mentioned, and then, of course, the impacts are stronger. We see impacts altogether very much in construction sector, for example, in wood processing. We see the problems in logistics and transport, which I think you're all very much familiar with, fertilizers, car manufacturers. So there are various inputs that are missing, and of course also markets that have been lost, not to mention the human tragedy and the everyday hostilities and atrocities we see happening in Ukraine. So on this, of course, EU has taken actions, and you have all seen the sanctions packages coming. But maybe then from a more kind of a constructive side, let me also mention a few things that have happened over the few last weeks, which might be of interest. We have worked and we continue to work on solutions for energy, and we expect mid-May approximately to have a next EU policy communication out, which will talk about how do we repower Europe, how do we really speed up the necessary technologies for green transition, so the technologies needed for renewable energy, for example, solar, wind, but also heat pumps, and also biogas, for example. So these are very high on our agenda. You also heard from Commissioner that we are working on a package for single market emergency instrument, which should make us more prepared for situations that we face today. We are working also on raw materials availability, and hopefully we'll be able to come with some proposals on this. We have recently adopted guidance to member states how to facilitate the integration of the many war refugees into our labor markets to allow these people to also really earn proper incomes and to be accommodated in our economies. We have made also a recent move towards making some export credit guarantees available again for doing business with Ukraine. And I wanted to pass on this message because I think among the many countries in the neighborhood of Ukraine, I believe Lithuanian Export Credit Agency is one of the very few ones which is still offering export cover, so export insurance for the deals for the business with Ukraine. But now at European level, we make a counter guarantee available for such offer, and I hope that also in the other countries, the export guarantees would again be then made available for imports and exports with Ukraine. And then an important point is that, as you all know, Ukraine has also applied for membership in the European Union, so this analysis is ongoing. And we, in parallel, have restarted our work on something that is called Agreement on Conformity, Assessment and Acceptance of Industrial Products. But behind this word, or this the long title, is the work to see together with Ukrainian authorities how can we make their quality assessments of various products really fit for European single market, so that as soon as the situation on the battlefield allows this, and as soon as we have this so-called ACA agreed with Ukraine, they could also start doing really business with European side based on this new ACA framework. But this probably will take us still a few months to go through. Nevertheless, I think in the context today, where we're looking at this kind of region, we truly hope that Ukraine can also restart their economy soon. Now, a couple more points maybe on the longer term issues. On the longer term issues, certainly the EU strategic dependencies, strategic capacity building is something that we very much emphasize and need to still work on. Just one example is magnesium shortage, which has been again hindering our car manufacturers and all the steel production and so on. So we have invited member states who are ready to invest into this value chain to work together to build also European magnesium production, and not only the extraction but also recycling and all that goes with the value chain. So I say this is one example from the point of view that beside the big policy aims towards more resilience, we really now look into specific value chains, such as availability of solar PV panels, such as building up hydrogen economy in Europe, such as even these raw materials, be it magnesium or permanent magnets for windmills. So this type of work is what we invest into to increase our resilience. And then on the other hand, of course, when we talk about renewable energy, to also enable Europe to wean us off from Russian gas and oil imports, which, as you know, are still ongoing. As to the manufacturing capacities, we very much want Europe to be able to have good jobs in Europe for our people, and particularly in the areas where we know that the markets are developing fast, be it electromobility, batteries, be it manufacturing of the solar, as I mentioned already, or also hydrogen. It's important that we have manufacturing in Europe as well. And one way we support it is through the industrial alliances. We have industrial alliances for batteries, for plastic circulation, being circular plastics, rather, I should say, raw materials, hydrogen. So these are the ways how we promote industries to come together and build these new value chains. We also should pay particular attention to not only extraction and availability of raw material, but very much also on the sustainability and circular use of materials which we already have in our economies. On this front, we are working on regulative side of things. We have recently, as Commission, adopted a package, circular economy package, where you also find eco-design for products, sustainable products. We are pushing forward with various recycling targets. And for all the people in the audience today, I believe in this circular economy thinking and recycling and reuse of materials. That is also a business opportunity which can be captured. And then as to the food operators, whom I believe we have today here also quite a number, we work, DG Grow, we work with other parts of the Commission, DG Agri particularly, to ensure that the war in Ukraine would how can we meet the crisis that comes from the war. We know that Ukrainian operators are ready to bring their wheat and sunflower oil to the markets, and Commission is looking into ways of helping the logistics to be smoothened, because this is currently the main difficulty for them to try and get their goods to their global markets. And finally, a few words about the clusters. I believe that having the cluster collaboration throughout Europe is something that really can make us so much stronger. And we would like, as European Commission, to use the power of clusters and networks, such as our Enterprise Europe network as well, to mobilize businesses to help build new business contacts and new value chains. And of course, through your work, through your efforts, the policies that we design can actually then be implemented and will make the impact. So we truly appreciate the European cluster collaboration that happens. We have also initiated a few additional tools that should help you to use the cluster collaboration, such as a platform available with various information on how to find partners, but also information on Ukraine and what kind of supply chain remediation opportunities that would be. We have also a forum, EU Cluster Support for Ukraine, that facilitates indeed finding partners within Ukraine, and there is also an overview of what kind of support would be needed. And then there is this European Supply Chain Resilience Platform, which is an open marketplace for many European SMEs to find suppliers, to find markets. So we also suggest that you look into this Supply Chain Resilience Platform and take advantage of it. So summing up, I hope that today we are going to use occasion to face our challenges, these very difficult times that we're going through now, with concrete solutions, ideas, new business opportunities, finding partners. And then by doing so, we also keep an eye on the longer term trajectory going towards green, digital and resilient Europe. So I wish all of us good luck with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you, Mayre. Now I have some questions for you, okay? The first ones are for both you, so you can choose who take it first. What is your view on the current situation of companies which have to face supply chain disruptions due to the geopolitical situation? China's restriction on Lithuania, and now the war on Ukraine.
So first of all, we must acknowledge that geopolitical situation plays an important role for business growth and development. Most of our problems today are actually caused because of that undervaluation of geopolitical situation. If we have been more insightful into whom we are living nearby to, maybe today we would have less of a problems that we are speaking here today, and we could be more ready to face those challenges that we are having here today. At the same time, of course, every challenge brings new opportunities. So disruption to supply chains incentivize companies to search for new ways to minimize delays, diversify their supply chain, for new, more efficient ways to conduct business. As an example, not from a cluster area, but from the SME area, our agency, Enterprise Lithuania, which has turned into innovation agency, a one-stop shop for business and an instrument for fostering innovation in Lithuania, has done a research during the COVID pandemic, and we had done a small business survey where they asked small businesses, how are your ways of doing business are changing? And there was an interesting insight that 80% of SMEs which started online trade during the pandemic actually said that they are not planning to go back to the physical trade. So the changes and the disruptions are very, very prominent, and some of them will not be like negative ones. We can see positive things like the internet trade turnover and stuff like that, that opens the global markets for Lithuanian SMEs. As I said before, Lithuania is a small but open economy, and we have been able to keep ourselves above the water during the COVID-19 pandemic. And as I said, that in November last year, we had highest monthly year-on-year growth for industrial production in the Eurozone. This was made possible, of course, thanks to the swift financial and safety measures that were put in place. And of course, because of the adaptivity of our small and medium enterprises and the emergence of a trend to supply chain nearshoring. What we are having now, we are also reacting very swiftly. In the first days of war, actually, we were getting to know the situation that we'll be living in, and we were actually solving the problems that we are talking about today. For example, one of the areas that were causing us some fear was rising prices in construction sector, and the formation of possible bubbles there that may, put our real estate in terrible situation. So together with the Department of Statistics, we managed to make an indices of construction prices and put them in place in few weeks, so that not only business to business or business to private and persons relationships can be indexed according to the inflation of various components, but also this instrument could be used in public procurements, so that we could, avoid the contraction in the construction sector. So yeah, another thing that we were working on very seriously were the certification procedures in Lithuania, because we know that the lack of shortage of metals and especially steel is the thing that may, put the whole economy into very serious and dangerous situations. So these might seem like a short and simple solutions, but they are very important ones, because they do not let the economy go into panic. Of course, the war in Ukraine is unprecedented, and certain sectors will inevitably be affected in short term. We see rising prices, we see disruption of production in some sectors that were largely serviced by Ukraine. However, the effects of war in the medium and long term, they will depend on the length of the conflict and, of course, many other factors. Various scenarios can happen, we all know that, and the effect should not be only seen in a regional matter, because this is a global problem, and this is a global economic situation that we are living in. Of course, what Maida Ruta said before, it is incredible to witness such a level of unity and solidarity among business and people when it comes to supporting and helping Ukraine to survive this unprecedented act of violence. The EU and its leaders and institutions need to keep this unity and to take the opportunity to strengthen economic and political relations. The situation that we had talking before was, of course, China as well. China's undeclared measures against Lithuania which have been applied full scale since December 2021, are unprecedented, and they are a clear case of economic coercion. So all goods of Lithuanian origin are eliminated from the Chinese market through systematic technical barriers, and China is putting pressure on international companies to eliminate goods and components that are manufactured in Lithuania in exchange for access to Chinese market. China's sanctions against Lithuania are unacceptable, and as Commissioner Breton said previously, they are a gross violation of international trade and China's commitments to World Trade Organization. They are a front not only against one of EU member states, but also against the EU and single market and the EU as a trading system. We welcome EU's firm response and firm and principled stance here, and the Commission's decision to open a WTO case against China over its economic coercion against Lithuania that was joined by other G7 countries. China's coercion here is an opportunity as well. It sounds depressing a little bit, but it's an opportunity to correct the imbalances and vulnerabilities of EU-China relations and to assure better defense of European interests. We need to seek for more equal partnership and normative power. So I wouldn't want to keep you all in such a negative stance because as you heard that, yes, Lithuanian companies were negatively affected twice. First by China's embargo, later by war in Ukraine. However, it is a possibility to look for new partnerships. Lithuania is doing that actively in Southern Asia, and we are actively strengthening economic ties with like-minded democracies. The network of our economic representation in Asia is rapidly expanding in the region. With the new embassies in Korea and Singapore are opening. Expansion of economic relations with Taiwan is one of the directions of diversification that we are really happy about. It is also important to emphasize that most businesses do not make spontaneous decisions. They first weigh the costs and benefits and act according to changing situation. Hence, of course, more time is needed to evaluate the situation and respond with certainty about the impact of such major challenges that we are facing today. Our job in the Ministry of Economy and Innovation, of course, is to help these companies find new markets, diversify, and of course, it will take additional effort by the government and businesses, but it's essential actually that those trade ties will not come back in the nearest foreseeable future. So we must keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you to you. You're doing a great job in facing all those difficulties. Maeve, what are your comments on that question? What is your view on the current
Thank
situation?
you. Maybe indeed I would complement what Eva had already expressed. And let me say that through our cluster survey, where many of you have participated and given your replies to us, we received more than 450 quite substantial responses to the cluster survey. And from this, we see that about 1/3 of companies will be affected negatively. So they feel that the war in Ukraine and the sanctions and counter-sanctions will have impact on their competitiveness. So, of course, one, let's say, immediate measure that you have already seen Commission taking is the extension of so-called temporary state aid framework, which allows member states to offer state aid in various formats, be it support for keeping employees or be it support for investments. So it can vary from one member state to another, but at least I would say that this has been a very immediate, concrete and quick step. Then a further point that certainly comes to my mind is we were not monitoring such trends previously. This has not been so high on our radar screen because the situation on our markets has been different. So with the COVID, it already started that we realized as Europe that we need to have much better overview of the supply chains. We already started to see the disruptions. And now over the last years, but particularly over the last weeks, of course, where we are facing the war and the impacts, we have been building an overview and market monitoring to also see what the price developments are and where the various shortages are appearing. So the shortages, which some of them are linked to our long-term strategic dependencies, but some are, of course, rather temporary in the nature. I'll just mention a few of the things which keep coming back through various questionnaires that we have sent and also through our consultations with business organizations. Carbon black, for example, or the tire industries. It's not something that one would have thought previously would be really an issue, but due to the war and the sanctions is becoming a problem. Neon gas and various industrial pure gases which were produced exactly in the area in Ukraine, which is currently under battle. Basically, that is where our laser industries, our car and various technologies used to receive inputs. And of course, it is now affected. Synthetic fiber, palladium, platinum. Commissioner mentioned wire harnesses, which we need for engines or for the car manufacturing. Steel and aluminium have been going up in price. But even areas which we were maybe not realizing before, such as our car manufacturers, using a lot of software development, which was done in Ukraine previously. And now, of course, quite a share of these software developers are at the battlefield. So, of course, it has an impact. And we also see that a lot of the truck drivers and construction workers are missing, whom we used to have previously, either from Ukraine, but also truck drivers from Russia. So these additional elements are also having impact, besides of the direct impact of war itself or sanctions. So of course, some of these difficulties are temporary in nature and there will be solutions found. But some others, I would say, are really dependencies which we should be addressing on longer term as well. When we talk about European so-called open strategic autonomy, what we really have in mind is that, yes, we want to continue being the continent which is most, let's say, involved in international trade. If we value it, we want it. However, we want the trade to be according to our values, and we want this to be based on our strengths. It should not be based on our weaknesses. And currently we have quite a number of areas where our dependency is high. Let me just mention again these rare earth and permanent magnets based on rare earth. We are dependent on China in the magnitude of something like 98%, which is really high. So could there be other partners who could supply us? Could it be that we develop some capacity also in Europe, or at least with countries with whom we can reliably hope that they are not going to turn against us? So this type of thinking is, I think, a thinking we have to develop, particularly now as we are seeing some of our former, let's say, trading partners really choosing sides which we didn't expect to happen, or at least we didn't expect this to happen to such extent. So there, I would say, longer term, we need to see how do we push ahead with our decarbonization of the economy, being less dependent on any of the fossil fuels that we currently buy, either from Russia, but also from elsewhere. When we can produce our energy in Europe, be it from wind, solar, this is important. But also there are, of course, smaller sources such as even biogas, which can be hopefully at least double, but some say it can be quadrupled in Europe. We need to be looking into reliable partners, as I mentioned already. I found an interesting term called friend shoring. So meaning that we don't certainly intend to bring all the manufacturing to Europe. So that is certainly not our plan. But we should have friends globally, or at least like-minded partners with whom we can work. And then, of course, within Europe, we still need capacity to also produce and recycle ourselves. So when we talk about car manufacturing and the new batteries, for example, we need access to lithium. And some of the countries, I think Finland particularly, are looking into this type of future opportunities. So I would also say that besides of the open trade and finding partners globally, we need to be building, or we need to be investing more into Europe's own capacities in innovation, in raw materials, and also in manufacturing.
Thank you. And indeed, we as clusters want to participate on looking for those capacities and building. Clusters are important to implement various policy objectives here, and many initiatives are being pursued where clusters are involved. So, usefulness of clusters as a tool to realize top-down ideas. In your view, how clusters can connect bottom-up needs and top-down initiatives?
I see that we are running out of time, so I'll try to be very quick here. One particular area where clusters play a prominent role is, of course, green transition. Clusters can be used as drivers of change and accelerators and enablers of green transition through mobilizing and facilitating cooperation among stakeholders and, of course, industrial ecosystems. Also, clusters, they can provide of sustainable advisory services and convince business about the importance of a green transition. So there's a two-way need to raise awareness on green transition. Firstly, clusters themselves should possess necessary knowledge on the greening and spread it to their members. And secondly, of course, clusters, they can act as providers of relevant advisory services. We do believe that clusters can be used to develop and implement circular economy strategies and action plans, detect opportunities for circular solutions, and bring circularity in the business process. I believe Deputy Director General already mentioned this very important area. Clusters can also be used as intermediaries to support the green transition and channel expertise and financing of SMEs. In Lithuania, this problem is particularly important, and the work of clusters can be especially meaningful here, because here in Lithuania, one of the problems that we are actually dealing with is financing of SMEs, or lack of finance to SMEs. So we believe that clusters can be useful in helping SMEs to find the right funding and equity instruments. Clusters, of course, they can be used as an integral part of digital innovation hubs, and they can act as strategic agents for the implementation of digital policies and development of initiatives that reach out to SMEs and other digital solutions. Clusters can be used to make, of course, value and supply chains more resilient. That's what we talked about a lot today. They can create synergies and cooperation with SME and employer organizations, which is very important, and which was even more important during the pandemic situation. They can help to prepare for new opportunities and challenges, and they could have an active role, of course, in local labor markets through building their capacities for skilling and upskilling. I think that this topic is also very, very important for Lithuania, as skills development, of course, is essential for industrial transition. So I think that the last thing maybe that clusters can be used as a tool just to build critical mass of SMEs, businesses, of course, and researchers to enter global markets. We know that sometimes this can be hard for companies, and especially small and medium enterprises, but clusters can enable access to global value chains. They can reshape possibilities regarding the new reality, and they can specifically play a role, of course, turning EU's existing and future free trade agreements into practice for benefit of small medium enterprises. So maybe I'll leave time for you.
Thank you. glad to see that you have a so complete view on cluster capacities, and we are anyway going to explore them today and explore how to make them stronger here in your country. So, Maeve, the last question just for you. The EU clusters and our regional, national, and international cluster networks reflect Europe's initiative and collaborative spirit. Would you encourage the regions where clusters are still weak to undertake measures supporting clusters to help build strong industrial ecosystems?
Well, I think the response is quite obvious. We have already heard very strong support for clusters from Lithuania. So let me just reiterate perhaps that I see the clusters as a really great tool to help businesses with questions such as what to do, so inspiration, information, good ideas. Business opportunities should open through the clusters, so that what can be maybe supported by clusters. And secondly, with whom? So clusters are all about networking, finding the contacts, finding the partners, finding the markets. So again, very beneficial. Then the question that, of course, every business will face immediately is how do you do things? Where do you get the funding? Or where do you find the skilled people to go for your plans? So again, clusters would be helpful. And I think altogether, the regions which don't yet have clusters, we would very much indeed encourage you to go in this direction. And I would then say that since we have been talking today already for quite a long time, I realize that the event is in fact very much about networking. So we better let you do some networking as well, because this is the biggest value added. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So we will work to answer those hows, no? Today and tomorrow. Thank you very much to both of you, and looking forward for the next panels. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonio, and thank you very much, Vice Minister and Deputy Director General, for this